Okay, welcome everybody to our fourth Sacred Masculine class on the Mars Aries God archetype, the Fierce Protector. In this 24-month synodic cycle, we are at the stage where Mars has moved now from the first act, the departure act, and into phase 2, the initiation act. And the Mars Moon conjunction that will be coming up on January 21st is the indicator of the second labor that Mars will be undergoing, that the archetype will be undergoing. And so we'll get more into that through the class, explain some of that language, that vocabulary as we get into the class. So here is the agenda. And one of the things that I'm adding to the class at this time, which is new, is to establish spiritual projection before opening sacred space. I was guided that at this particular time, it's very important for us to establish spiritual protection. And more than that, it's important for us to do it while the class is being recorded so that we can model that to those that may come across this work and see it. So we'll be going over January's creative energies because we have some new participants in the Mars journey. We'll be looking at the Mars-Venus overtones of all of us that are working together. We do have another participant, Leela, who's in the Sacred Feminine class. And so she's in that information, although she's not a part of this class. We're going to look at the hero's journey and the Mars Synodic cycle, how the two pieces of that weave together. We're going to be doing some time on closure around what happened last month with Mars, the phase 1 of the Mars training being complete. We're going to talk about the 12 labors of Hercules, which we did not do last month, even though last month was the first labor, because now that we're going into this period of time when we're going to be having, approximately 10 different labors as Mars is moving across the sky, it's really important for us to understand what these 12 labors of Hercules are because they relate to what's happening with Mars in the sky. So we'll do that first before we do the closure on the first labor. And then that gives us the background information as we dive into what's happening this month with the second labor. So again, looking at the stages of the hero's journey archetype, and then going into phase 2 of the labors of Mars, talking a little bit more about the test, enemies, and allies piece, talking a little bit more about the second labor, looking at what the aspects in the sky will be on that activation date of the 21st, being able to see how that appears on the chart. We'll talk about some Vision Quest opportunities that you can choose to participate, which we can then discuss at the group session if you choose to do this work. I always say it's optional. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. And the other side of that, of course, is the more you put in, the more you get out. So just keep that in mind as well. And as always, at any point throughout the class, questions and answers, ahas, points of clarity, whatever is required, because this is a co-creative experience for us. So that's the agenda. It's a huge amount to get through, and we will just trust that we will get through it in perfect timing. All right, so here we are. We're going to establish spiritual protection. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the armor of God as a spiritual protection tool. It definitely is a tool that comes from the Bible. This is the King James Version. I'm just old school. I like this version. I'm sure it probably has different language in other versions. And so it speaks to the different pieces of the armor. And this image here gives you a really good idea of what that is. Instead of speaking to each piece, we're just going to vision that we know what the spirit, the armor of God is as we do this protection and know that it is being put upon us. So if everybody will get really, really super centered and close your eyes, we're going to take several deep breaths to get centered here and now. So if you will take a deep inhale, breathing deep into your belly, letting that go. Another deep inhale, bringing that breath into the pelvic floor, letting it go with the exhale. And one more really deep inhale, all the way down to the tailbone, and allowing the exhale, feeling yourself connected to the center of the earth. And as we are in this space, we call on the full armor of God to be placed upon each of us. And with that knowing that we are moving forward in the full armor of God, I surround our sacred space and the grid that is connecting each of us, and I seal it with the light of the golden ray. Aho. When you're ready to come back, then we will open our sacred space. So just give me the thumbs up when you're ready.
And may I ask, what's the protection of the boot on the what's the phrasing? I can read the others except for
The left.
yes, where he has his foot out and it says for protection with something peace.
Are you looking at the image or are you looking at the verbiage?
The image. I was looking at the image.
It says feet prepared with the gospel of peace. And over here it says your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. And it says the gospel of peace is being right with God and being contented in troubled times. And it further says, Jesus said, peacemakers were blessed. So you'll have these slides after class and you'll be able to look more acutely at what each of these are saying about the different pieces of the armor of God.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to open sacred space by doing the invocation of the god Uranus. So whatever you need to do to create your space, I've got my candle on. If you need to light a candle, if you'd like to use sage or sprays or incense, I'm going to use my spray. This spray is to establish a link between heaven and earth. It's a spray made by Amanda Ellis in the UK, and her spirit guide is Archangel Metatron. So when your space is prepared and you're ready for the invocation, just give me the thumbs up. Okay, and we're going to invite Gary as our sacred masculine participant to do the invocation for us.
Okay. Invocation of the god Uranus. I invoke the power of Uranus to radically change my life situation. Bring me to currents of divine freedom and openness. I seek your magnetic and all-attractive energy to shatter past patterns and bring forth new, exciting developments into my life.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gary. Okay, so the reason we're invoking the god Uranus today is you're going to see that Uranus is conjunct the moon Mars aspect in the sky, and that's why we're invoking him today. All right, so because we haven't worked with the god Uranus before, it's really fun to, in terms of shamanic astrology, to understand the mythology behind them. And so what we discover here is that according to Hesiod, first there was the primeval chaos. And that's what this image represents in the beginning. And from this chaos, from this emptiness, emerged Gaia, the goddess Gaia, who represents our Earth planet. And she is the one who then produced Uranus, the god Uranus. And here's a beautiful image of the goddess Gaia. She also produced the mountains and the sea. And through the sacred union of Gaia and Uranus were born the Titans, the Cyclops, and I don't know how to pronounce this word here, but they were some kind of giants that that reigned at that time or on the earth at that time. So there are some links here that you can look at if you want to go deeper into the mythology of the gods, Uranus. So he was also known as the primordial father of heaven. So it's interesting to kind of be able to tap into that mythology a bit as we're moving forward. Here are the creative energies for January that are related to the different aspects in the sky, the transits in the sky during this month while we were having the root gate activation for the sacred feminine, while we're having this second labors of Mars activation. We did talk about these in the sacred feminine class that we had on Monday. And here they are again, just to remind you. What's really interesting is yesterday, Uranus stationed direct at 6 degrees Taurus. In the sacred feminine class, we've been talking about the vision quest that Uranus has been doing for quite some months. And the fact that this just happened yesterday, our class is today. The actual second labor of Mars will be activated on the 21st. And so you can see here, the activation of the second labors is happening at 7 degrees of Taurus. Uranus moves very, very slowly. So at 6 degrees, 43 minutes, we round that up to 7 degrees. You can see that this is going to be a very close conjunction between Uranus, the moon, and Mars. And so this again speaks to invoking Uranus for this class. Oh, did I mention 3 days ago, the new moon in Capricorn happened as well. New moons are always about seeding new consciousness, and full moons are always about illuminating the consciousness that was seeded. And big deal, especially for Doreen, because her chart is ruled by Mercury. Mercury stations retrograde at the end of the month, and we're just coming out of that window of time where Mercury was conjunct Saturn and Jupiter. And of course, they had their big, great conjunction on the winter solstice at 29 degrees, at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And we talked about how Mercury, as the cosmic messenger, is sharing the message with us about what that great conjunction has to do with in terms of the vision for humanity that is that they are holding to be made manifest and expanded on our planet. So a lot going on this month in the sky, which will certainly, as you're tuned in, make you feel really stretched and expanded. And maybe sometimes until you're able to integrate it, possibly even a little overwhelmed. So it's okay. Just let it go, let it happen, let it flow through you.
Sophia, Mona Lisa,
Yes.
from listening to the videos and attending the last feminine class, this is Gary's and my first masculine class, so you're not alone in that respect, Doreen. My takeaway on Uranus, and I am new to this, but my takeaway has been when Uranus shows up, it's a sign of deep self-inspection.
That's an interesting perspective. The myth of Uranus is certainly different than the energy of Uranus that I choose to work with. And so because Uranus is the lord of the Aquarian realm, this astrological sign of Aquarius, what we're dealing with in terms of Uranus is significant liberation, freedom, radical visions that support that liberation and that freedom. And it's also the realm of the collective consciousness of humanity. It's the realm of working on the global level, the planetary level. And so while Uranus has been on this vision quest in Taurus, Taurus has to do with the sacred vessel, our physical bodies that we're embodied in. What he has been doing is he has been helping you to discover pieces of yourself that you may have forgotten about or given away that will help you to embody that energy of radical liberation, radical freedom.
It was his presence in Taurus that gave, I understand now. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Wonderful.
Maureen, anything you'd like to share about that from our discussions on that? On the Uranus and
On the
Taurus
Uranus?
vision quest?
No. thank
Okay,
you.
sure. It's just that Maureen has this phenomenal connection to the earth. And so she receives so many messages from the earth. And because Taurus as a sign represents the earth, just giving her the opportunity to share around that as well.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So this is exciting because, I mean, this month we've had 3 people come on board with us here at the Rose Wheel Mystery School. Very, very exciting time. And so, and each of the 3 of you are participating in the twin flame journey, the Venus class, the sacred feminine class, and the Mars class, the sacred masculine class. So let's see who has been called together to establish and expand the grid work of the Rose Wheel Mystery School and the work that's being offered through it. So here we have Doreen. Look at this. Her Mars overtone is in Aquarius. That's the archetype of the visionary. And so I mentioned to her recently that, the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius, the 3 Saturn-Uranus squares that will take place over this year are going to be huge for her in terms of the fact that her Mars overtone is in Aquarius as the visionary. And that archetype can perceive the big picture and is on the leading edge of consciousness. And so her stepping into this sacred space is a gift to us for her to be able to share what she's receiving as the visionary as we move forward with this work. I'm going to go through the Mars overtones first, and then we'll look at the Venus overtones. Gary, his Mars overtone is in Leo. This is the archetype of the star. And I don't mean like a star in the sky. We mean the star on the world stage with the spotlight on him. And that spotlight is on him because Leo, as the sign of the let me find the word, the compassionate heart, then beams through that energy of his self-confidence and personal power, and that frequency that is flowing through his compassionate heart inspires others to be heart connected, heart led, to step into their power and to step into it with confidence. So that's a significant piece that has been added to the grid of this work that we're doing. Carrie, her Mars overtone is in Sagittarius. This is the archetype of the intrepid explorer. Maureen and I are very familiar with the frequencies of Sagittarius because our natal Venuses, our inner sacred feminines, work in this realm. And so as the intrepid explorer, she is exploring new territory in spiritual consciousness. And you can envision that Sagittarius image of the bow and the arrow and shooting that arrow, and it's going high, high, high. And that's where she's always going. How high can she go into new areas of spiritual consciousness and truth? And so that is her Mars overtone, a fabulous energy to have within this grid. And so thank you. I bow to each of you. That is, I mean, I can't hardly even find words. I can feel the energy pouring through me. My mind is unable to find the words to describe what I'm tapping into in terms of the significance of the energies that these archetypes of your Mars overtones are bringing into this grid. It's beautiful. So thank you. Leela, who is not here in this class, you will meet her in the Sacred Feminine class. Her Mars overtone is in Gemini. That overtone, that archetype is the archetype of the eternal boy. You may know him as Peter Pan, and his energy is to remind us to lighten up and to believe in the magic. And Maureen and I, just like we have the same Venus overtones, we also have the same Mars overtones. And our Mars overtones are in Cancer. And this archetype for the sacred masculine is the good provider. And the good provider commits to the welfare of others, whether it is our planet that we know as Gaia, whether it is Mother Nature, the children of humanity, the animals that live and breathe and walk on this planet, or our own family units. And that's not even just our present family unit, that is our ancient lineage going back, and also our future lineage going forward. So those are the Mars overtone archetypes that have come together to support and to manifest through this work. So let's look at the Venus overtones. This, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is, I am like giddy. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4 of us. 4 of us that have a Scorpio overtone, as the alchemist, as the shamanist, as the magician. I mean, this is significant, and it's no surprise because the work that we're doing through the Rosewell Mystery School, and especially through the Sacred Feminine, is an alchemical work. It's deeply alchemical. And then this is spectacular. Look at Gary's Venus overtone and Leela's overtone, the Great Mother. Oh my God, this is beautiful. The Great Mother that is creating the safe space for all of this to unfold, to nurture all that is unfolding through this safe space. I mean, it's just beautiful. So there is no mistake that we are all here, that we all committed to before we incarnated to come here and do this work together. Is there anything that any of you are receiving at this time around this manifestation that is desiring to be heard?
I was present when I watched the video. I wasn't present when it happened, but I watched the video from November when the Sacred Feminine class invoked Scorpio. You all channeled Scorpio, and ta-da.
And then who showed up? Carrie shows up and Doreen shows up. I mean, thank you for putting the spotlight on that. And so even though it was imperceptible to us, the clarion call went out and you heard it and you answered it. So again, from the bottom of my heart, heart to heart, I deeply express my appreciation for showing up.
For calling.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, are we ready to move on? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Excellent. All right. So let's take a moment here and step back. This sacred masculine work is new for all of you, and it's new for me and for Maureen. And as I mentioned in the first sacred masculine class, the person who has done the groundbreaking work around the Mars synodic cycle is Daniel Giamario. And is it Eric Roth, Maureen?
Yes,
And Eric Roth.
yes.
The Mars synodic cycle is different than the Venus synodic cycle. The Venus synodic cycle is a 19-month journey. The Mars synodic cycle is a 24-month journey. The Venus 19-month cycle is based on the myth of Inanna and her journey into the underworld and her ascent therefrom. The Mars 24-month cycle is based on the hero's journey. So not only is working with the sacred masculine through the Mars synodic cycle new for us, working with the hero's journey is also new for us. And we've been kind of stumbling and bumbling our way through it. And I've had full confidence that however it's showing up is exactly the way it's intended to show up. Having said this, and acknowledging Daniel and Eric's work, I am certain that the way that we are working with the hero's journey and the Mars synodic cycle probably looks nothing like what they have been doing. And that's okay, because we are working with Aquarian frequencies. This is an Aquarian age goddess temple, the Golden Ray Center that the Roseville Mystery School was founded under. And it is these Aquarian archetypes that are guiding and inspiring me. So, you know, we stand on the shoulders of giants and we take the work forward. And so while it may look very different, we honor and appreciate that work. And our work is as valid and as valuable, okay? So because this is new for us, we've been working with how do these pieces integrate? How do they weave together the hero's journey and the Mars synodic cycle? And like I said, it's been, for me at least, I can speak to kind of an uncomfortable finding where they come together. And yet each month, and this is the fourth month, it's becoming clearer and clearer to me. So this slide, which I keep showing over and over again, has been the foundation for how do we blend these two stories together. And so we go back to Joseph Campbell, who was the initiator of this hero's journey. And he talked about it in terms of 3 acts. The departure act, which is in blue, coded in blue. The initiation act, which is encoded in red. And from the very first class, then the 3rd act, the return act, which was encoded in green. Okay, so that's the foundation of the hero's journey: the departure act, the initiation act, the return act. All right, fast forward then, Christopher Vogler, who is known as a screenwriter, took these 3 acts of Joseph Campbell's and he expanded them into 12 steps. And so you see here under the departure act, these 4 steps: the ordinary world, the call to adventure, the refusal of the call, the meeting the mentor. These are expansions of the departure act that Christopher Vogler created. And in the initiation act, the first 2, the crossing the threshold, the test the test, the allies and enemies. So now what we've done is we've taken Joseph Campbell's 3 acts and we're weaving in these specific steps from Christopher Vogler. Okay. And now what we're doing, kicking it up a notch, bam, we are taking the phases of the Mars synodic cycle and what's happening within those phases. And those are the phases that Daniel Giamario taught: the phase 0, conception, incubation, and gestation; phase 1, which includes the birth of the new archetype and Mars at puberty; phase 2, which is the labor of Mars, where we are now. So you see, we've gone from phase 0 and 1 into phase 2 of the Mars synodic cycle. And I am connecting those phases and what's happening with those phases to each of the steps that Christopher Vogler used to expand the 3 acts. And it can be a real, pardon the French, a real mind fuck to keep the pieces together, keep them straight, right? It's been tough for me. And I don't want to speak for Maureen. Maureen, do you want to speak to that for yourself? How's it been for you?
Very tough. It's been amazingly tough. And one of the things that I continue to be amazed at is the timing that brought this journey, the hero's journey, to the world stage in a new way. J.K. Rowling, I'm very, very involved with her Harry Potter series. I lived with it as it came to being from the start. So it was a 10-year journey. And she very, very closely followed the hero's journey with Harry Potter. And that was a worldwide phenomenon. So everybody became aware of the hero's journey. The other one was Tolkien, who's been around a long time. We've all known when he wrote those books, but a lot of people didn't understand the journey until the movies. And the movies very closely followed the hero's journey as well. So it was time for this to come to the consciousness, the collective consciousness of the world. And the more I look at the timing of those things and what's going on now, it's just mind-boggling to me how very, very prophetic those books and those works came to be in our world. Yeah.
Absolutely, Maureen. I completely validate that. Absolutely. And so Maureen, already knowing that, has been able to see this body of work in a different way than myself. And so wherever I have made a misstep, I deeply apologize. I'm doing the best that I can to help guide all of us through this, and thankfully have the support of Maureen to keep me on the right track. But you can see here with Daniel Giamario's work with the Mars Synodic cycle, what he's done through each of these 6 phases is he has identified, and you'll see them in orange here, the astrological aspects in the sky that signify where these phases and when these phases are occurring, that we are integrating back into the 12 steps of Vogler, which are founded in the foundational work of the 3 acts of Joseph Campbell. Okay. So that's why I keep showing this work. And it's almost like this particular slide was really inspired, because the more that I look at this slide, it's almost like a yantra. A yantra. You know what a yantra is? It's an image. It's an image that, and there's another word I'm looking for, I can't find it. It's a picture, and you look at the picture and it's encoded. And as you look at it, you receive the information. Okay.
Yes.
So that's how it's worked for me. Are you experiencing that, Maureen?
Yes, and I was just going to say that, just as with the Venus journey, the hero's journey is with Uranus. I mean, you can just see that layer upon layer are being added. It is going into new ground, and it is becoming, I think, a new experience, which is, that's important. And so while the hero's journey has been around for a long time and the basis of it doesn't change, there will be changes, a lot, that I think, as we study it, that we bring not only to our own personal journeys, but to the collective thought on what is happening. That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
and that's where you come in. I think you have a handle on that, Sophia Mona Lisa. New energy comes through you, and new information all the time. It just amazes me, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, sweetheart, for that acknowledgement. And so in terms of what Maureen was just describing, this goes back to the fact that, we have been under, I guess, 2,500 years of Piscean archetypical energy. And now we're in what they're calling the new Aquarian age. I myself and many others pointed to stepping in, crossing that threshold from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age at the winter solstice of 2012. I know recently, with the great conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius, this most recent winter solstice, people are proclaiming that to be the beginning of the Aquarian age. However you experience, what we're seeing here, and for myself, since leading up to and since 2012, so we're talking, 8 years going on 9 years, we're seeing the influence of these Aquarian energies that have been coming through and coming through. You know, it's not you're here one day in the Piscean energies and here the next day in the Aquarian energies. And if you think about a stove top that has the burners, you know, if you take the knob and you turn that burner on from off all the way up to high, those rings don't go from being black to instantly red. They have to heat up until it's all red and it's all hot. And it's the same way that when we're working with frequencies and we're working with the windows in which these frequencies are starting to influence us, it's the same way. It takes time for that energy to get red hot. And then when you turn them off, it doesn't go black. It takes time for those coils to cool down and become black. And that's how these frequencies are working with. And that's what Maureen is speaking to in terms of the old Piscean energies cooling off and these Aquarian energies heating up. And now here we are. We're in this Aquarian age. There's no doubt about it. And that great conjunction was the signal that the coils are now red hot. This is where we are. And it's those frequencies that are coming through us, that are working through us with this hero's journey and with the Mars Synodic cycle, and specifically this new Mars archetype on the world stage, which is the Aries archetype of the fierce protector. So hopefully that discussion helps you feel a little more stable, a little more centered and grounded in this synodic cycle, which is 180 degrees from our experience with the Venus synodic cycle. So how are you receiving that? Are we feeling good? Are we feeling stable? Are we feeling like we're catching on?
I'm keeping up.
Excellent. So,
And your school is based upon which one? Your school is based upon Aquarius as well?
yes, the Golden Ray Center, which I established, I don't even remember how many years ago, was established as an Aquarian age goddess temple. Then when I was doing my high priestess process through our lineage that goes back to the Magdalene schools and the Isis mystery schools, I was given the rose wheel. That's all I heard, rose wheel. And then it evolved into the rose wheel mystery school. So everything that I do through this work is all about the Aquarian frequencies, the Aquarian archetypes.
Mhm. And then, so where I'm a little lost, so then the new Aries archetype, right? So that's where I'm missing a disconnect. So what's the
Okay.
impact there?
Excellent question. So because you haven't had time yet to go back to that first class, and I kept telling the three of you, watch that first class for the Mars Synodic cycle, you get the foundational piece. And in that class, we talk about how this Mars Synodic cycle through Aries is the shift from the old Piscean archetype of Aries as the oh, my mind's gone blank.
Rugged individualist.
Thank you, Carrie. The rugged individualist from that archetype to this new Aquarian archetype in Aries as the fierce protector.
Thank you. I started at like class 3 because I should have started at class 1. I'm sorry. I thought
It's okay. It's okay. Good question. Good question. All right. So as we look at this slide, we can see that this month, here we are. We've gone from the Departure Act to the Initiation Act. We've gone from phase 0 to phase 1 to now phase 2 of the Mars cycle. And in terms of Voglers' work, we have gone through the ordinary world, the call to adventure, the refusal of the call, the meeting of the mentor, the crossing the first threshold, and now this month we're dealing with test, allies, and enemies. So is there everybody, does that feel good? Are you clear and up to speed on where we are this month?
Mhm.
Excellent. So again, these labors of Mars, and this is the longest phase of the 6 phases that Daniel Giamario put together. These labors of Mars track Mars as he moves across the sky. And each month they're signaled by the conjunction of Mars with the conjunction of Moon. Mars conjunct Moon. And where the astrological sign that conjunction takes place in gives us the themes and the feeling of the kind of labor that we are going to be encountering at that activation. All right, so we'll be going more into that. So here we are, January 20th, I thought it was the 21st, the second labor of Mars, okay?
And how long again? You said it's the longest one, but how long?
Generally, there are approximately 9 to 10 months where Mars is moving across the sky until the next phase is when Mars gets within 10 degrees of the sun and you can no longer see Mars in the sky. So it's different, just like with the Venus cycle. Sometimes we descend through 7 gates, sometimes we descend through 8 gates. So here, 9, 10 months, okay? And the marker for that in the sky is when Mars comes within 10 degrees of the sun. And because he's that close to the sun, we can no longer see him in the sky. So we got several months to go through before we get there. Next month, I'll have a slide similar to this showing the initiation act with all of those labors so that we can see what we're going to be going towards, okay? But we've gone through all of this, and this month, here we are, phase 2, the labors of Mars, second labor. So we've done a lot in 4 months.
Yeah, it's a lot in 4 months.
Yeah. Okay, so now it's time to do some closure work, some integration work around what happened in December. And December was a huge month because of the fact that during that month, we were dealing with, in phase 1, the refusal of the call, which had to do with Mars's training being complete, and the meeting of the mentor, which also had to do with Mars training being complete. So that was one activation in the sky. And then a second activation in the sky, which had to do with moving into crossing the first threshold, or crossing the threshold. That first shouldn't be there. Crossing the threshold. Crossing the threshold means we're moving from the ordinary world into the special magical world. And that's where the first labor happened. And let me just take a moment here to correct that. Crossing the threshold. See, it's things are starting to look clearer and clearer to me as I move through this. So these are 2 sections that, while you did not participate in the class and you were not consciously engaged, everybody on the planet was experiencing this. And so we're going to take some time to speak to what was going on then. And if anything comes up, is triggered within you that's desiring to be heard around this, please take this opportunity to speak to it, because that is the integration and closure process, okay? So I'm going to read through this quickly and you can follow along. In the refusal of the call, This is where the hero digs in their feet. They don't want to accept the call to action because on an unconscious level, they know that if I take this call to action, I am putting myself at risk. I'm going to be encountering these perils, and in the magical world, right? That's the special world, not the ordinary world. You're going to be encountering perils like spiders and trolls or dragons. That's what shows up in the special world. And so, you know, for the sacred masculine and for the Mars Synodic cycle, we can see that this refusal of the call is really a refusal to change, because we know we're letting go of one way of being, and by the end of it, we're going to be a completely different person. And so, you know, we're refusing this opportunity to make this paradigm shift really within us, because the fears, the unconscious places, the shadow pieces are being triggered. That fear is keeping us from stepping into that call. And so, you know, we can see here that this is for all of us, sacred feminine overtones in Scorpio. We can identify with this piece of the hero's journey as being the process of death and rebirth. We are intimate with this process of death and rebirth. And we know that when the hero accepts this call to action, that they are stepping into the death and rebirth process. Okay. Now, the key to leaving the refusal, or another way to say accepting the call to action, comes in the form of a supernatural aid, a kind person, some wise figure or message. And in these stories that we're familiar with, we can identify the hero and we can identify the wise figure. That makes sense to us. Without the wise figure, the hero would not have accepted the call to action. And when that wise figure steps up to convince them to do that, this is the phase called meeting the mentor. Okay. In the meeting of the mentor, the hero is not quite ready to go on this adventure, right? They're not ready to spread their wings yet. And so there's a stage here of receiving some kind of personal training. This is very connected to this Mars training process. And they cannot cross that threshold until this training is complete. They cannot go from the ordinary world into the special world until that education is complete. And that's because they need this training, because they've got to be successful, right? You don't want them to, I love this, you don't want them to do a fabulous belly flop off the cliff. I mean, think about Frodo when he was having to leave the Shire, you know, and there's that scene where he and the other hobbits crossed that point, that boundary point where they had never in their lifetimes gone beyond, and it was somewhere in that cornfield. Okay. So the role of the hero is to get them ready, right? So that they don't make a total fool of themselves or get themselves killed. So the mentor is preparing them to face the unknown and to accept the adventure. And they can also be the ones that provide them with the magical equipment that they're going to need in that special world that they can use when all appears doomed. We can think of, I don't remember what it was called, that light that the big elf woman gave to Frodo when they were in that forest. That was a magical tool that was given to him from that particular mentor. And there may be more than one mentor. All right. So again, the role of the mentor is to give the hero the supplies, the knowledge, and the confidence required to overcome their fear and to face the adventure. You know, with Dorothy, it was the ruby slippers. And then the good witch tells her, you had it all along, right? And so we can relate to these stories and relate them to our own lives to see how was that showing up for us over the month of December when we were going through that refusal of the call and meeting the mentor and having the training from the mentor, to where we were then also then stepping over that threshold from the ordinary world into the special world. So let's just speak to these pieces around the phase 1 portion of the Mars synodic cycle that is coming complete at this point of that first December activation. So anybody being fed any ahas or realizations about what they experienced last month that relates to this? I see some heads nodding. So
I know I think it was December 30th. So I'm maybe a little behind on the phases for myself as an individual. But December 30th, I was sending Carrie pictures of the moon that night, and the moon was huge and it had a big light and circle around it. And then there was another light that kept moving around that space. So I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was supposed to glean from it. I know it wouldn't let me sleep. Like, it was like I had nowhere else to go other than to go outside and to sit there and just take it in for quite some time. So I didn't know what it was, but to me, that was me kind of maybe again saying to Carrie, and I said to her maybe like a week or so later, I said, I need some guidance, right? And then comes in Carrie, comes in you, so Sophia, Mona Lisa, so kind of bringing those mentors into my life and kind of helping me make those transitions.
absolutely, absolutely. And what a hugely mythical manifestation of that, because that full moon, while it was on the 29th, I believe, it was, and the window of a full moon is 3 days before, the day of, and 3 days after. So the 29th was the full moon. And then you've got the 30th, the 31st, and the 1st. That full moon in Cancer. Cancer is the great mother, illuminating the pathway, illuminating the bridge from the old world to the special world, the Aquarian world, and showing up just when our Julian calendar shifts from December 31st to on New Year's Eve to January 1st, the new year. Beautiful manifestation.
And December 31st was when I had my solar return reading with Sophia, Mona Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And remember, you brought into my awareness today, the first time she texted me was on the winter solstice, the day of the great conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter that had not happened in 800 years.
And I had had your number for weeks.
Wow.
I was supposed to message you sooner, but I wasn't answering the call.
There you go. There you go. And so you see, again, this bridge from the remnants of the old Piscean energies of the quote unquote ordinary world for the past 2,500 years to the special world, the new magical world of the Aquarian age that is being emphasized by the 3 Saturn Uranus squares over the course of this entire 2021, and the full moon in Cancer illuminating that pathway, illuminating the bridge between the ordinary world and the special world.
And that's how I met my mentor.
Gary, anything to say around this?
Yeah, but I think most of the meat of the conversation is going to be when we do our one-on-one.
Okay.
But there is some personal realizations that do fall right in line with this.
Excellent. Excellent. Maureen?
I pretty much dug in my feet until about 2012 because that's a long time to refuse the mission. But I was incensed that I had to look at an internal male. You know, my Mars is in Capricorn. So is my sun and so is my Mercury. So I wanted nothing to do with it. I said, I'm not going to look at that part of me. I didn't say it quite like that, but that's essentially what I was doing, was to not admit that there was a part of me that I did not want to look at. And finally, I had to turn and face him and say, okay, you be good now. What is your message? You know, because to me, he was just a critical parent, which Capricorn can be in the shadows. So yeah, it was a long time before I turned and looked at that, at the journey of my male internal energy.
And that's a huge awareness heightening, because Maureen is right. The Capricorn archetype in the masculine energy and in the negative, you know, the shadow energy of Capricorn is that very critical parent, the authoritarian. And in the conscious archetype, the light archetype, I mean, this is a huge shift into the tribal elder, the way shower. And so her inner masculine inviting her into this call to action to acknowledge the old Piscean shadow aspects of Capricorn and plunge herself into exploring this new Aquarian aspect of the Capricorn archetype. That's hard. You know, they talk about people who have been abused coming to love their abuser because that's all they know. And so to have the courage to step out of that space into the unknown takes a huge amount of inner strength. And I am convinced, because as we've discussed on many occasions, that Maureen and I were in France during that Inanna underworld phase where Venus and Mars were there together in the underworld, an event that only happens every 34 years. That was the event that allowed her the activations that she experienced at the seat of Isis, that was the event that enabled her to cross that threshold. And then this work with the sacred masculine and the Mars Synodic cycle was the manifestation of that.
Yes, for sure.
So I would like to offer maybe an additional way of looking at the relationship between the inner masculine in a female embodiment. As I was listening to, and I'm almost caught up. I've got a few minutes left of number 3 of this. So I did watch 1 and 2, and I have most of 3. What I noticed in 1 was the conversation that actually there was three of you because Wanda was present, that the three of you were having regarding your comfort level with your masculine energy and how you're coming into it, and how your scripts from your past have kind of fostered the feminine and kind of limited the masculine. And I wished I had been present during that conversation. So I'm going to take this opportunity to share that by nature of my lineage and my birth circumstances, I have actually been on the hero's journey my whole life. And I am now at challenge to actually embrace the feminine energy and the female cycle as rather new to me. So it's about as new to me as the masculine is to you. And I'm about as comfortable with the masculine as you all appear to be with the feminine. And so I offer that. And I have Doreen's like that. I have stories that we could go back and look at the timeframes of what was going on with Mars. And I think we will find that I've been listening and following and working with this cycle for most, if not all, of my life.
That's an excellent point, Carrie, and thank you for sharing that, because that's true for all of us. Even though we were not consciously engaged, this is a galactic blueprint, and we are all influenced by it, whether it's perceptible to us or not, on the one hand. And on the other hand, this is the beauty of having Gary here with us, because of the fact that there historically has not been space for the masculine energy to show up within a feminine body. And so that's a unique experience for you. And with Gary having permission to engage and work with the masculine energy, and receiving the cultural programming that to allow himself to engage with the feminine energy makes him less than and or weak, he shows up as a masculine vessel who is very comfortable engaging with his inner feminine. And so it's a beautiful, again, when we're talking about the yin yang, the Mars energy, the Venus energy, the masculine energy, the feminine, it's a beautiful tapestry of who has been called here together to engage with this work, excuse me, and for us to share this work on the world stage by offering these classes through the Roseville Mystery School YouTube channel, and offering those sacred feminine libraries and sacred masculine libraries. The work that we are doing collectively here is so important, not only for us individually, personally, also for the collective consciousness of humanity, transpersonally. So thank you for speaking to that, Carrie.
Thank you.
So that's the integration piece. More of this may come up for you, and you will have an opportunity in the group session on Saturday, and also in your personal session. Anything that comes up that's desiring to be heard, you can share at that point. So that was one activation in December. Before we look at the second activation in December, which was the activation of that first labor, let's dive into what are the 12 labors of Hercules. And what's interesting with the myth of Hercules is actually the Roman name for Heracles, Heracles. And they're synonymous. We've got the Greek names, and then we've got the Roman names. And here's Hercules here, Heracles. And so when we're looking at the myth of Heracles, the Greek form, that myth is based a lot on Hera and her vengeance. Hera, the Greek form of Juno, the Roman goddess. And what have we been saying through this entire sacred feminine journey? How present Juno, the goddess of sacred partnership, is. Now, I want to go a little bit deeper into that, because when you hear about her role with Hercules, it's going to be maybe a bit of a disconnect. So with Juno, her counterpart, her consort, her beloved is Jupiter. With Hera, that's Zeus. Okay. Speaking of Juno and Jupiter from the Roman perspective, Jupiter, like Zeus in the Greek perspective, is not at all monogamous. And yet, Juno is so dedicated to sacred partnership that she does not hold her partner, her beloved Jupiter, responsible for his dalliances. Rather, she holds the women with whom he had those dalliances responsible. And so that's an interesting manifestation. And that's the manifestation that shows up here with this myth around the 12 labors of Hercules. And so what we find out is that Hercules is born a demigod, not unlike Asmodeus. And it would be really great, Maureen, for us to find out who is the god that was the father of Asmodeus and who was the mortal who was the mother of Asmodeus. So he's a demigod. His father was Zeus, right, the immortal, and his mother was a mortal princess. Now, of course, Zeus being married to Hera when he fathers Hercules, and this infidelity enrages Hera, and it ultimately leads to Hercules killing his wife and his children, who he loves and adores. Her rage. Now, when that happens, then Hercules turns to Apollo to find out what he can do to make up for his wrongdoings. And so we kind of see this, like, kind of going off on a tangent here, how through the Catholic Church, you're required to go into confession and receive from the priest, what do I do to make up for the fact that I've had these sins? Kind of a similar dynamic here. And so Apollo tells Hercules, well, instead of doing 12 Hail Marys, you're going to go to this king and you're going to work for this king to make up for those wrongdoings. The wrongdoings that he was manipulated energetically through Hera's rage to commit. So Hera is not satisfied still, because she is still determined to have Hercules, right, the seed of Zeus, and that infidelity to be eliminated from the world. And so she goes to the king and she orders the king to give Hercules these 12 labors, these impossible tasks for him to fulfill. And she believes that somewhere along the line, by attempting to complete these impossible tasks, he's not going to be successful. He's going to die. He's going to be killed. And that will finally eradicate him from the world. And so in come the 12 labors. The first labor, which relates to the first labor that was activated by Mars and the moon in December, is where he has to slay this lion, this invincible lion, who brings devastation and fear to everyone who's living around him. And not only is he ordered to slay that lion, but as proof of slaying the lion, he has to bring back the skin. And so we'll look into that a little bit. This next labor, the second labor, relates to what will happen at the activation this month. It's on the 20th or the 21st. I can't remember. And that's where he's now sent out to slay this Hydra. Again, a mythical creature, right? A mythical monster that is a 9-headed serpent. And the Hydra is venomous, and he has 8 mortal heads and 1 immortal head. And what happens, we learn, is when he cuts off 1 head, 2 more grow back, right? So this is what's the impossibility about it. And so we'll look at that to see how that plays out for this second labor. So going back to this first labor, the invincible lion and trying to slay him and bringing back his skin. Let's see how that relates to what was activated last month. All right. This is where the hero crosses the threshold, right? He takes on this first impossible labor. And down here on this link, you can read the whole story about that. And so several things jumped out at me as I read that. First of all, when he goes to do that, he is not taking any allies with him. And we know that by this piece of the myth. He met no man in the field or in the forest. Fear held them all shut up in their distant dwellings. He cannot rely on his weapons. So Hercules continued on his way, his quiver of arrows over his shoulder, his bow in one hand, and in the other a club that he made from the trunk of a wild olive tree. Then his arrow, he shot him. Then with his arrow, this is when he comes upon finally this lion. With his arrow, he shoots the lion in the side, but the shot did not pierce the lion's flesh. Instead, it flies back as if it's as if it struck a stone and it falls on the earth. So his arrows are not able. There's several points where he's trying to shoot him with this arrow, even in the heart when he exposes his chest. The arrows are not able to pierce this lion's skin. They just keep getting flung back. So then he takes his club and he swings his club over the head of the beast. His club is not helping him to kill the lion. And so what he has to do is he has to spring on the lion and he has to strangle the lion, because none of the weapons that he goes with, the arrows, the club, are helping him to kill this lion. He has to rely on his own courage. And we know that because the entire afternoon he's wandering through the thick undergrowth of the forest where the lion lives, and he's determined to test his own strength, the strength that he has as a demigod, which is beyond any other mortal's strength. So he's going to test his strength just as soon as he encounters the lion. He must rely on his innate gifts, these innate gifts that he receives as a demigod. And so before the lion could take another breath, Hercules is on him, right? He's relying on his strength. That's the innate gift. He's on the lion. He's thrown down his bow and his quiver so that he doesn't have anything encumbering him. And he approaches the lion behind and he takes his arm around the neck of the lion and he strangles him. So he can't kill the lion with his weapons. He has to use his own courage to face him. He has to use his own innate gift, his strength as a demigod to strangle and kill the lion. Now, Once he's done that, remember, not only does he have to kill the lion, he has to bring back the skin of the lion to prove that he's killed it. Well, for a long time, he seeks in vain to strip the hide off of the lion, but the skin of the lion will not yield to any weapon or stone that he has. So this is where he must rely on his own wits. He gets the idea that instead of trying to take the skin off with the weapons that he has, he uses the lion's own claws to rip and tear the skin off of him. And that is successful. That's how he's able to get the skin of the lion. And then from the skin of the lion, he creates a talisman, right? These talismans, these magical things that they can use as they go forward on the journey. So what he does is he prepares for himself out of the lion skin a coat of mail, and from the neck of the lion, a helmet. So these are the pieces of that first labor that I identified that I feel may very likely be significant as we cross the threshold from the ordinary world and into the special world and meet that first labor. So that's the activation that took place with the Mars and the Moon last month. Is any of this resonating with you? What's coming up around what manifested, what you experienced last month around these themes for that first labor?
I think for me, just, again, trying to even just acknowledge or listen to, or for me, it's trying to get out of my head and be quiet, right? To know what those strengths that I have and how I'm supposed to apply them to, again, go through these stages for me is something that I would say I'm still trying to understand and learn. But I think that there was a stronger, like, trying to get my attention, right? Like hello, wake up kind of thing. So, for me, it was kind of more just, again, like he's learning in this phase, he's learning again, what are those skills, abilities, gifts, how does he apply them, like kind of rethinking things from a different way. So I would say I'm doing some of that. I wouldn't say that I was maybe as creative or successful as he was in applying them, but that's kind of where I guess I'm at.
Doreen, that's excellent. And that really points to the fact that what we see here is he's no longer in the ordinary world. Everything that he would have relied on in the ordinary world to meet this task is not working for him. He's in the special world. He's in the magical world. What can he rely on if those old skills, right, that we've been taught, we've been indoctrinated with, if you do this, you will be successful at that, they're not working for us. And so, because we haven't been really encouraged in many cases to look at what are the innate gifts that we as a extension of source have been endowed with as we embodied on this planet, what are those gifts that I can engage with to help me encounter and be successful with this special world? And that's exactly what you are describing.
So my understanding of this phase, of this particular phase, is I think of our weapons as defenses. And we often have armed ourselves from our past with defenses that worked for our past. And this is the stage where we deconstruct our own defenses because they are no longer useful in this world, in this realm. And then we have to do that. It's actually, so using the claws, using ourself, we must tear away from ourselves our own skin so that we are free to explore what's coming next.
Absolutely, Carrie. I mean, that's a beautiful analogy. And maybe it's, you know, in terms of these defenses that you're talking about and looking at the old Piscean archetype of the Mars Aries archetype, maybe it's that armor that the knight in shining armor puts on. It's time to take that off, right? So that we can see ourselves, our bodies, our vessels, and the fullness of what they are without that armor, and then go within and find those innate gifts. That's a beautiful, beautiful analogy that you speak to.
We are shedding, oh shoot, I lost it. I didn't write it down. We are shedding, you mentioned it before. We are shedding, what are we shedding? Somebody help me. Oh, our rugged individualism. That's
Yes.
what I was looking for.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what I did.
Mhm.
That's what I'm working on.
Absolutely, Carrie. And we were able to be a rugged individualist because we had that armor on, right?
Right.
And when we take off that armor, we are able to be the fierce protector because instead of that metal, we've got the full armor of God.
Mhm. Mhm.
That which is not seen, that which protects us from in this special world, from the spiritual world. And that enables us to be the fierce protector. And so here you have described beautifully this transition of the archetypes, the Mars Aries archetype, from the rugged individualist into the fierce protector in terms of how it relates to us individually and as a humanity.
So that which is not seen gets me to something that was said in the last class. It was a great question Maureen asked. She saw Armodius and she says, where's the thing in his hand, right? He's obviously holding something we can't see. And so I did some research, Maureen. I went and I looked to see if I could figure out what that sucker is supposed to have in his hand. And I found something. Are you ready?
We are ready.
Okay. So Asmodeus, I got this. This is new age. Young people are working in this space. Okay. So I had to like kind of go through gamers to get here. But this is what I came up with. What is usually in Armodius's hand is a ruby rod. Okay. And that ruby rod, there's more, that ruby rod can be used to bludgeon, but it does not damage physically or physically harm its victims, okay? It can spew electricity, acid, or intense cold. That's how it beams itself. And it has 3 protective qualities. Are you ready? One is to get the person to bow down to the wielder. Another is magical repair. And the third is protection from spells. So while I was working through all this, it came to me that the ruby rod is a staff of radical truth. And that's why you can't see it. Until you can see the radical truth, you will not see his staff.
Mm.
It's invisible.
Carrie, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's
and it-
wonderful.
And it
Thank you.
ties into what I was saying to Maureen, whether it was in the class or privately, that I could sense that it was a sword of truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ruby rod.
Yes.
And
Radical change.
and the ruby rod relates to the root chakra, the gate activation that we
Oh my
had
God.
this month with the sacred feminine. And if you know anything about Asmodeus, he, when you cross over the threshold of the Magdalene Cathedral and Rensselaer Chateau, he is at the root of the fount. There's Asmodeus, and he is holding up the fount of water that people dip their hands in to bless themselves with when they cross over that threshold from the ordinary world into the special world, Maureen.
Oh, yes. That is amazing. Yeah, wow. I would have never thought of going into the gamers, who play with these characters. I wouldn't have probably known where to go, but that's wonderful.
It's where it took me. It's where I didn't go there. It's where the search took me, where the answers were. I had to accept the source. It's hard from where I come from to accept the source, but I've learned to trust this new generation because they come already encoded with what they need for the now. They are our guides.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. That is just wonderful. Thank you.
And here's another synchronistic piece for that, Carrie, which you don't know. Maureen and I have been having these private discussions about Asmodeus, and she's aware that I actually put out the call to know more about Asmodeus and what that object was that he is holding in his hand.
Yes,
I feel
indeed.
ya. It's awesome.
Oh, that's so cool.
Thank you very much for that piece. That's really spectacular.
And what's the direct correlation again to the root chakra? Like just about different works or energy, or how does that tie to the root chakra?
So earlier this month in January, in terms of the Venus Synodic cycle, as Inanna is making her way down into the underworld, we have passed through the 7th gate, and that gate is an activation of the root chakra center. And so that just happened last week, right? Or this week on Monday, right? So what, 5 days ago?
Yep.
I mean,
when does my root stop hurting? Sophia Moniz, when do I get my comfort back?
Well, let me prepare you. We're getting ready next month to go into the Inanna underworld.
So
And the ascent from the underworld, trying to remember, because I don't have it in front of me. I think it happens in May. I think it's in May that we ascend from the underworld and activate that first gate where we receive back our full empowerment of the root chakra. So between now and May, between these labors of Mars and being in the Inanna underworld, going through that final gate of the Earth star, there's a lot that's transpiring.
but when we go through the gate of the Earth star, can I expect some at least physical relief in the root?
I cannot answer that question,
Okay,
Carrie,
we'll
because
find out.
everybody experiences it differently.
I'm going to pay attention. I'll let you know.
Yeah.
My personal journey in this regard is very much tied to Gary's, so I'm going to let him lead on that.
Okay. Gary, is there anything about integrating this first labor from last month that you'd like to speak to?
It's funny how between November and December, the first labor, I would say, had been kind of like an emotional roller coaster, and realizing how some of my situations in my past, I have had to take on some reconciliation. So in that, I would apply that. I would apply that here.
I hear you. I hear you, because in the ordinary world, the skills that you would rely on to be able to effect the reconciliation weren't working for you. Now you've crossed the threshold and you're going to have to use new skills to support you in that reconciliation. Right? These innate gifts
Yeah.
that are going to become apparent to you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it's there's mixed emotions with it. It's a little scary, but it's also elating.
Yeah. Yeah, I validate those feelings. Yep. Absolutely. Whew. This is huge stuff. This is really huge stuff. What do you have to say about this, Maureen? You must just be like doing the jig over there.
Oh my gosh, yes, I am. I am just absolutely amazed at this. And it just resonates so strongly with me that yes, that is exactly what it is. And Sophia Mona Lisa had talked to me about the sword, and I thought, yeah, it's some sort of weapon, but I didn't think it was a weapon to, destroy, because that wasn't my feeling when I entered the church and saw him there. I wanted to go hug him, but the problem is he's encased in glass because people don't want to hug him; they want to destroy him. And it makes perfect sense now. People cannot sometimes, especially in those circumstances, look at the truth. And if he is in effect the representative of radical truth, then he's the one you would attack, right? And they've had to replace them many times over the years. So they finally just encased him in glass. So I just stood there, with my hands on the glass and my nose up against it. I mean, so to speak, and wanted to get close to him. So it's very, it's wonderful to have that feeling of, yes, absolutely, that's what he was doing there. That's why he's there.
You guys were close because Maureen, in the last, when he came up in the last class, you called it a staff. And then
Yeah.
Sophia Mona Lisa realized it was related to truth. So you guys were correct
You were getting that.
collectively.
Oh, I'm just getting goosebumps all over me.
You're like swirling right around the truth, swirling right around it.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
When I looked it up, it was a scepter. So there you go.
There you go. A scepter, a staff, a rod. They're all very similar, aren't they?
A wand.
Yeah. And I remember Maureen saying that she sensed there was a staff there.
The way he's holding it. It's not missing. It's there.
He's holding it. Yeah.
He's holding it. You just can't see it yet. Now you will.
it.
Now you see it, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, and that ties back to the seat of Isis, because they know in terms of how he is lined up in terms of his positioning, that there is an alignment, a geographical alignment between him and the seat of Isis, which for thousands of years was called the seat of the devil.
Mm.
And it's a multi-dimensional portal.
Mhm.
And so the fact that he's holding this rod that's in another dimension absolutely ties it back to the seat of Isis as a multi-dimensional portal.
That makes sense.
It does.
And I keep these notes in my handy dandy notebook that someone very special gave me for my birthday.
Good job, Gary.
Oh, it was Doreen.
But hey,
Okay. Good job, Dory.
I got other special things from Gary on me. This one's Doreen.
Great. So are we feeling complete around this first labor then from last month?
Yeah, I'm understanding. I'm on track. I still have to go back and learn some more, but I'm understanding where we're at now.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Maureen, how are you feeling? I mean, I'm starting to like really get into the groove of this and really starting to groove with it. How about you?
Yes, absolutely. I'm ready to take it on.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Carrie, Doreen, and Gary, for your contribution to this, because it's just blown the lid off of it, hasn't Maureen?
Oh my, yes, absolutely.
And thank
Perfect timing.
Mhm.
Perfect timing.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at the next piece. Oh. Well, I don't think we need to go through this whole slide. And it's there. You can go back on your own time. You can read through how the first labor occurred in the sign of Aries, conjunct Eris. Get this, the goddess of radical truth.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
And with the Aries energy, some of the negative or shadow traits of the Aries energy. So you can go back and look at that. You may want to speak to some of that might need to be integrated at the group session or in your personal session. And of course, I'm getting perseverated on the fact that I put this in here and it's not supposed to be there. All right. All right. So that's there as a resource. If you want to know more about the mythology of Eris as a goddess, there is a link here. And these points that I pulled out are from that mythology. Now remember that these mythologies are from the old Piscean archetypes. We are not relating to these gods and goddesses from the Piscean archetype. We're relating to them from the Aquarian archetype. And so while they're calling Eris the goddess of discord, we are relating to her as the goddess of radical truth. Okay, just bringing that clarification piece in. So that's there for you. All right. So once more, looking at the stages of the hero's journey archetype, we are now in this initiation act. You know, what we experienced last month with the activation of that first labor was certainly, as we've described here, an initiation. And I'm trying to move this thing so I can read my there we go. All right. And so we can see now we're in this initiation act, right? The three acts that Joseph Campbell established. Here are all of the 12 steps that Christopher Vogler, as the screenwriter, put together. And you can see by the color coding which of these steps relate to each act. So here we are in the red zone, the initiation act. And this month, and over the next 9 to 10 months or so, we'll be going through these tests, allies, and enemies as we're dealing with these labors. All right, so that kind of brings it back around full circle, so you can see how all of this is tying together.
Mhm.
Is this making sense to everybody?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Okay, now this is a huge piece. Recently, I don't know if you know who David Wilcock is. He has an organization called Divine Cosmos, and he works on the planetary level. He recently did a global peace meditation. And in that global peace meditation, he's talking about Joan of Arc and the hero's journey. And I can't put the link of that in here. And I should have put the instead of saying David Wilcox video, I should have put the link of it here. It will be on the resource page to the YouTube of this. Now, bless his heart, he's kind of like me. He gets really long-winded. So it's like a 3-hour video. And bless his heart, kind of like me, he has a tendency to go off on these tangents and very slowly meander back to the main point. And I'm certain it's because, like me, he is receiving so much information simultaneously and trying to translate it and get it out there. So please provide a space of compassion and patience around him. And what I did is I put the markers in here. First of all, I was absolutely blown off my seat when at this point, these 20 seconds, 1 hour, 5 minutes, 4 seconds to 24 seconds, he starts to channel the Aquarius Aries archetype of the fierce protector and is addressing all of the men in his audience. And let me tell you, he had in excess of 22,000 people around the world tuned in at the time of this event. And then later on, at about the 2-hour mark, is when he starts diving into the hero's journey. And he calls it, which I love, a galactic evolutionary template. And he says that this galactic evolutionary template is a kind of software that is deeply installed in our subconscious mind. And that is why Christopher Vogler used this as a template for writing all of these movies as a screenwriter, that by watching this hero's journey over 1.5 hours to 2 hours, it's resonating with this galactic evolutionary template that we don't know is installed in our subconscious mind. Personally, from my perspective, I would like to say that this software, this template, is encoded in our DNA as a light code. And it is that resonation that he is tapping into. And he talks in this discussion that he gives about the hero's journey, he talks about these 3 acts of Joseph Campbell's in terms of the story, the movie story, as the setup, the conflict, and the resolution. And it's clear to me that the setup is the departure act, the conflict is the initiation act, and the resolution is the return act. So I give you those pieces that, should you choose to go back and look at that, and again, I will have that on the resource page, you can go right to those places and you will know what he's talking about. And I will tell you, while we've done a lot to unpack and become more intimate with the hero's journey in today's class, when you hear what he has to say, it's like, oh, of course, every movie that you've ever seen, especially your favorite ones, it's like, oh, that's the hero, and oh, that's the talisman, and oh, that's the ment, and you will get it. It will just become like, whoa, yeah. So that's why I offer that to you here as we are wrapping up that piece about how the Mars Synodic cycle and the hero's journey is working together. Okay. All right. So now let's dig into these labors of Mars, these tests, enemies, and allies. And you can see here from this image how far we have already come and where we are standing now. Okay. So with these tests, enemies, and allies, it's important to understand that we're at the stage here where we are on this road of trials, where we have to face the great number of challenges that we will be encountering as we move towards the goal. And it's this piece again that ties back to Hercules' 12 labors, which is why I spent so much time going over that. We also know that here there's this deep paradigm shift is happening. This in terms of alchemy, this alchemical process is happening within the hero as he's going along this road of trials. And it's interesting to point out again that Joseph Campbell, who is the initiator of this concept of the hero's journey, compares this part of it, the test, enemies, and allies, to an ancient healing ritual where a shaman is tasked to go to the land of the dead in order to recover the soul of a sick person. And so it's clear to see here that those of us with this Venus overtone in Scorpio that have this archetype, a feminine archetype of the alchemist and of the shamanist, how this very much relates to even our work with the sacred masculine as we're going through this process with Mars. It talks again here, I'm trying to move these, pardon me, I keep trying to move you guys so that I can read my slides. It talks again about how this special world that we have now entered has a completely different feel, a different rhythm, different priorities and values, different rules than the ordinary world. This is why the old skills that we've relied on to get us this far don't work for us. We've got to become intimate with this different rhythm, this different priority, these different rules. And going through these labors of Mars will help us go deeper and deeper into becoming intimate with this new world that we have stepped into, whose threshold we have crossed into. And it tells us here, okay, that these tests how quickly we adjust to those new rules. Now, the special world is usually dominated by a villain or shadow who has set traps for the intruder. All right, we discover enemies and rivals. As David Wilcock speaks to when he talks about the hero's journey, as we have discussed in our own classes, this villain, this enemy, this rival, this shadow piece that we are confronting are the pieces within us, the shadow pieces within us, the places within us that have not yet been exposed to the fullness of our greatness, the light that we are. And that's what's happening as we go through these labors, that each of those little pockets within us that holds these fine frequencies of resonance that is not empowered is receiving the light, our light, from the greatness of who we are as extensions of source, as children of God. Our own light is going into those deep pockets within us and is transmuting them and transforming them. And that is who we are meeting. We are meeting our own self. And we are, through alchemy, transforming and expanding and evolving our own selves. So of course it makes sense that all of these unconscious places within us that are becoming conscious is a huge paradigm shift. We will not be who we once were by the time we finish this journey. We will be a more expanded and evolved presence of ourselves on this planet. I see the heads nodding. What do you have to say about this?
I have something to say.
Yes.
Recovering the sick person, the shaman recovering the sick person, and you touched on it. While we're going through this, make sure that the sick person is you and not someone else, or you're being codependent.
Beautiful.
And I bring this up because on the sheet of paper that I started jotting my notes down to be able to remember what to say to you all while I wait patiently and absorb what I am receiving, I had a note to self from prior, and when I saw this piece of paper, I didn't throw it out. I said, I will be needing this on Saturday, and it says, people with healthy boundaries perceive people with unhealthy boundaries as dangerous. And boundary setting is the challenge of the codependent. So that's how I got to the whole make sure that sick person is you.
Thank you for
Wow.
sharing that
Look,
piece.
the animals came. I hear the dog and I see the horse.
Yeah. Son Susan.
Oh yeah, I do have, but he's here. Me, it's not my dog. That's Doreen's dog barking at my horse in Florida.
Yeah.
No, I think it's animals often do answer in these things at the time. It's relevant.
And I think, definitely in December, if not even prior to that, I mean, my, almost daily has been, please guard and protect me, and including myself, So, I've been constantly seeing on a daily basis, right? Like, guard and protect me from certain individuals, but at the same time, including myself, right? So that I'm not deceiving myself and I'm not letting myself either. And again, things that I'm not dealing with to also harm me, so I don't want to be my own enemy, right? So that's been part of my kind of daily, calls, prayers, asking for protection. So
Absolutely, Doreen. And thank you for speaking to that. And this is why I was guided in this class. And I mean, we've done 7 sacred feminine classes. This is the 4th sacred masculine class. I was guided for us to model putting on that special protection. We must consciously every day engage this protection for ourselves. And as we are bringing light into these places within us, these places of unconsciousness within us, we are raising our frequencies. And as we raise our frequency, then those out there, right, who are vibrating at those lower frequencies cannot show up in our landscape, and they cannot impact us. And so if they are showing up, it is a reminder to you that you have allowed your frequency to drop, and that's okay. It's a reminder that in that moment you become aware and you can shift. You are empowered to use your emotional guidance system to shift and raise your frequency. And it's again another part of your protective system, so that those lower frequencies out there are not showing up in your external landscape and are not impacting you.
yeah, good point.
So this is the 3rd phase of the 6 of the Mars Synodic cycle that we are in. And remember, we're going to be in this phase for like the next 8, 9, 10 months. Okay. So it's really important to understand what we are encountering over these next 8 to 9 months. All right. As we go through this special world, and as we're affecting this alchemical change. We talk about the caterpillar that goes into the chrysalis and becomes the butterfly. This is what's happening. And when the caterpillar is in the chrysalis, in that magical space, right, the special world that's not the ordinary world, everything is dissolving. And that's what's happening within us. Okay? Gary, anything to add? Anything to acknowledge?
Yeah, I think I'm going to keep this one to a later time.
Okay.
But it's interesting about the healing ritual.
Yes.
That did speak to me.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Maureen, you good?
Yes, I am. I had a actual soul retrieval experience with a shaman. It was was my friend. She is a shaman, and she performed a ceremony with me, and because of my age, she says, I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to bring back all your soul losses where you have disassociated. And there were 5, and some were, they ranged the entire lifetime. You know, they started out when I was a child to when I was in my 30s, I think. That, anyway, it is life changing, and I know how to relate to that. I think in the way that I experienced it myself. I didn't feel particularly overwhelmed because I had 5 new things to look at in my life, but I can relate to the healing ritual in that way. Very personal.
Yes. Yes. And for those of 4 of us that have that Venus overtone of Scorpio, we are very intimate with this process, very intimate with this process. People who have Scorpio on their ascendant will also be very intimate with this process. People that have Pluto in their first house will be very intimate with this process. People who have Scorpio in their 8th house, which is the house that Scorpio rules, will be even more so intimate. It's like a double layer of experience with this kind of ancient healing ritual.
Would these be Akashic records?
You know, I don't work with Akashic records, so it's an interesting question and I can't answer it. And maybe you can find somebody who works with Akashic records that can make the connection between that work and this work. Okay, so we're having this activation this month, and this is the terrain that we're in for this month, okay? So let's look at this second labor, and we're going to look at it from the vantage point of what the myth is around Hercules and his second labor. We're going to look at it from the vantage point of what astrological sign is this activation is taking place in, and we're going to look at it from the perspective of what luminary body is conjuncting this Mars moon in the sky. So we got 3 layers here that we're going to dig down through in terms of what's being activated within us this month at the second layer. Okay. I will do my best to move through it as quickly as possible. Okay. In this second layer, and remember, this relates to Hercules going here to take care of this Hydra, right? The one with the 9 heads, 8 of them are mortal, 1 of them's immortal. And again, I'm having problems with there it is. Okay. All right. So this time, unlike the first time, Hercules takes an ally with him. And the ally that he takes is his beloved nephew. And unfortunately, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Iolaus. If anybody knows how to pronounce that, you're welcome to share that with us. But for now, I'm just going to call him the nephew. Okay. So he takes an ally with him, his nephew this time. Then they have to confront the monster. This is what we do in the magical world. We have magical creatures and monsters show up. So we know that the Hydra is this enormous creature, a serpent with 9 heads. Okay, I'm not even going to go on a tangent about the alchemical underlying of what the serpent represents. But okay, a serpent with 9 heads, 8 are mortal, 1 is immortal. And as I mentioned before, no sooner does Hercules cut off 1 of the mortal heads, 2 more grow in its place. And this is what's making this particularly impossible. Okay. This time, unlike the, oops, sorry, where did I go? This time, unlike the last time, Hercules is attacked by an enemy. So while he's trying to deal with the Hydra, this enormous crab comes to the help of Hydra. So let me just say here, okay, crab being a symbol of Cancer, feminine energy, serpent being a symbol of Scorpio, water element, feminine energy. So I'm just going to throw that out there. You can do what you want with it, okay? There's no mistaking here, okay? So this enormous crab comes to help the Hydra, and he's biting Hercules' feet. And so Hercules is trying to kill the crab with his club. And meanwhile, now he's calling to his ally, his nephew, to come for help. The ally, his nephew, starts to use the element of fire. Okay, no mistaking here, right? What does the fire element relate to? Shakti, Kundalini, serpent energy, okay? Just that's as far as I'm going to go with that. So I'm not going to take you down the rabbit hole with that, okay? But just bringing it into your awareness as we look at this myth, okay? So the nephew has lit a torch, and what he does is each time the head is cut off and the new heads grow, he brands them with this fire torch, which keeps them from living, because remember, they're mortal. So he uses the fire to kill the new head. That way, another one doesn't grow in its place, all right? So by the ally, the nephew taking care of all of those double heads that are spurting, coming up every time he's killed off one, it allows Hercules to kind of get control of the situation. So now all he has to do is deal with the immortal head, right? The last of the 9 heads. And he is able to cut off the head of the Hydra, the immortal head, that was not able to be killed before. So there's a correlation here that when all of the mortal heads are killed, the immortal head can be killed. If the mortal heads are not killed, if they're still living, the immortal head cannot be killed. So pick up on that correlation there, okay? This ties in again to this activation of the root chakra through the sacred feminine. What did we talk about? We talked about the silver cord, and that when that silver cord gets severed, what happens? Your spirit is separated from your physical body. The body dies, okay? There's a correlation here between what's happening at this activation of the sacred feminine at the 7th gate root chakra on Monday and what's happening now with this second labor with Mars. You can't make this stuff up for this stuff to be happening simultaneously, okay? It's not a coincidence, all right? Then Hercules, because we are in the magical world, the special world, he creates another talisman before. He's got the talisman from the lion. Now he creates another talisman. And what he does is he takes the body of the Hydra, he cuts it in half, and he takes all of the arrows that he carries with him, and he dips those arrowheads in the blood of the Hydra. The blood of the Hydra is poisonous. And so from that time on, the wounds that Hercules makes with his arrows become fatal because of the poison on the tips of them from this Hydra, okay? So that's the mythology behind this second labor. Now, let's look at where this is happening in the sky. Okay, again, trying to say, I'm watching you guys and it's overwriting my slides, so I'm having to play around with that. All right, so this second labor occurs in the sign of Taurus, and it's conjunct Uranus, the primordial god of the heavens. Each of those pieces we've alluded to earlier today. So going back to the myth of Uranus, right? These myths are from the Piscean age. we were going to look at the downfall of Uranus. So what we discover is that Uranus was not a loving father to the children that he had with Gaia. And when the 12 Titans were born, he becomes a cold and tyrannical ruler to them. The Titans were the first generation of gods embodying great power, and Uranus denies them their power because he wants to keep his children subordinate to him. And while he was not a big fan of the Titans, he mostly was really expressing his cruelty towards the other children. And his full hatred then fell on these giants, whose name I can't say, and the Cyclops, okay? He thought that these children were too monstrous and too hideous to be allowed to exist. Now think about this. In this process, we have these dark places within us, as Maureen said, we dissociated from the dark places that are not in the light. We've dissociated from these places because we think that those places within us are too monstrous and hideous to be allowed to exist. And so Uranus buries them deep within Gaia, whereas we bury those deep places within us, within our unconscious, as Jung calls it, okay? So Gaia could not see her children, but she could feel them scratching at her as they attempted to find their way to freedom. Freedom is that Aquarian word that's, right? Uranus. Uranus is all about radical freedom, radical liberation, right? Well, the same kind of thing is happening within us. Whenever we are feeling quote unquote triggered, emotionally triggered, that's because one of these dark places, this unconscious place within us, is ready for us to see it, look at it, acknowledge it, so that it can be let go of and the light can flow in, right? You cannot have a void in the universe. As soon as there's a void, something must flow in and fill the void. And in this instance, as we are being shown these dark, unconscious, wounded places within us, as soon as we acknowledge them, that opens the door for the light to flow in, okay? Gaia was furious that Uranus had treated her children so poorly, and while he was a hard-hearted father, Gaia's maternal instinct made her want to fight for her children's freedom. She could not overthrow Uranus by herself, and so she asked her children for help in defeating their father. And in the end, they do overthrow him. Okay, so this Uranus conjunction to the moon and Mars at this second layer, there's a lot of pieces of this myth that are going to be themes behind what you're experiencing with this second layer, that are going to be integrated in the themes that we just talked about in terms of Hercules and the myth of his second labor, okay? So now let's look at Taurus. And what we see here are some of the shadow manifestations of this Taurian energy. All right. We know that Taurus is represented by the bull, Taurus the bull. And just as bulls, as a shamanic animal, medicine animal, are known for their incredible stubbornness, this Taurian energy often manifests through us in the shadow, right? The shadow is the unconscious, as being very set in our ways. And this quality makes us super resistant to change, right? So this is a key, that when you're meeting this second labor, any area within you that is really, really resistant to change may be triggered. Okay, it's trying to get your attention to be acknowledged. All right. This Taurian energy is not fond of authority and might manifest within you as challenging someone or something that you perceive as an authority figure. And and I'm speaking to the audience here, if you are in a marriage relationship or a long-term partnership relationship, and there is not a balance between the partners, the other partner may be perceived as that authority figure. And now with this Taurian energy, you may feel like you need to challenge that partner, right? Especially if they say or do something that you think is wrong or wasting your time, okay? All right, this Taurian influence can cause you to take your pleasure seeking way too far. So let's just give a simple example. If you like ice cream, you might be buying tons and tons of Breyer's ice cream and eating a whole half gallon at a time, right? That's taking the pleasure of enjoying ice cream way too far. That's just a really mundane example. There are other examples coming into my head that I don't want to talk about, all right? So when we take our pleasure seeking too far, this becomes a hedonistic tendency. And I don't have to speak to what some of those hedonistic tendencies that we're aware of on the world stage are. That's all I'm going to say, okay? And these hedonistic tendencies can lead us to being very lazy and to shift into this energy of procrastinating. Even though we know that there's work that we're supposed to do, we just won't step up to the plate. So again, if you're experiencing any manifestations of your energy in this way, and you're seeing it in some of the experiences that you're having, right? Then the Kmart blue special light will go on saying, whoops, here you are. This is coming up for you to work with. All right. Now, on the way other end of the spectrum, this Taurian energy can manifest as being a huge perfectionist. And if this happens, then what you're going to experience is seeing people in your life, situations in your life that are not perfect, right? And if you perceive those and this energy is manifesting in this way, you may have complete disdain for them, and at the least and at the most may even just say, that's it, I'm walking away, I'm done, I'm out of here. Okay, so these are some of the ways, again, the themes and the ways that this second labor that's being activated on the 20th or 21st may show up for you. And remember, this is happening over then the next month, right? From that activation point into the next month when we have that third labor. And remember what we said about energies cranking up and energies cooling off. You may have already experienced some of this month or even last month, and you may continue to experience some of this through February and into March. You're going to see how this is like flowing in and out of your life, depending on what you require to experience to support your personal evolution and expansion. Okay. Any questions about any of that information? We've gone from one layer, we've taken it down, and we've taken it down again. All right. So there's a lot there that can show up for us. All right. Thumbs up.
It starts at, you said that like the 21st, 25th of the month.
That's when it's activated. We're going to see that next when we look at the chart. But like I said, you could already be experiencing some of this right now. Okay. The activation is just a moment in time. All right. Remember, in reality, there is no time and everything is happening in the now, which is why you may experience it before, during, and after. Okay. There'll be what I call bleed over, right? Okay. All right. So here are the aspects. And here's the chart. All right. I've talked about how I color code these. And in previous recordings, in the early ones, you'll be able to see the keywords here. We'll talk about these specifically in your personal session. And I promise you, I know I've been saying this now, this is the second month, I am working on the compendium of these keywords to put on the resource page for you to use. So this first one is always the activation point. This is the Uranus, Mars, Moon at 7 degrees of Taurus, squaring Saturn, Jupiter at 4 to 7 Aquarius. These astrological aspects and what they are about, I've talked about them in the first and second classes for the sacred feminine. Go back to those classes and watch them so that you can get a full understanding. I will also compile that information into a document that I will post, okay? So let's look at what it looks like on the chart. So we're looking at this is like a, what do you say? Like a burgundy color, okay? So here we go. Here's the chart. There's Uranus, the moon, and Mars. You can see how close they are, right? The little blue dash tells you exactly where they are. How very, very close, almost standing precisely in the same place in the sky, okay? In Taurus. A square means a 90-degree angle, right? So 90 degrees over here in Aquarius, there we have that Jupiter, Saturn conjunction right there. Remembering that these squares are always opportunities for breakthrough and consciousness. You have to cross the threshold to take advantage of the opportunity. If you don't cross the threshold, you don't have the breakthrough in consciousness. All right. So that's the activation of that second labor. Now, simultaneously, we have a grand cross in the sky. And that grand cross is activating the path of conscious equal partnership and the path of home, family, and community. The path of conscious equal partnership is that Aries Libra axis, 180 degrees from each other. That's why it's called an opposition across the sky from us. Invoking Eris, right? She was conjunct that first labor last month, and she's a part of this grand cross. This is huge. Remember that grand crosses are infinite possibilities for creation and breakthroughs in consciousness. So the goddess of radical truth standing across the sky from the Magdalene, the high priestess of the sacred feminine, the embodiment of the Sophia consciousness. All right, happening on the path of conscious equal partnership. The path of home, family, and community is that Cancer, Capricorn axis. And so here we go. There's Asmodeus with his ruby rod standing next to Medusa, right? Those paralyzing fears, those patriarchal fears, those patriarchal wounds that paralyze us. Look at where it's happening. It's happening at and close to that 29-degree point of Cancer that I've said is that mastery point of every astrological sign. We know there's 30 degrees in a sign. They go from 0 to 29, 29 being the mastery point. And where are they standing? Across the sky from Pluto. right? The god of death and rebirth, right? Transformation. All of those paralyzing fears that Asmodeus is bringing our attention to within us, having this opportunity to be transformed and create something new at a higher frequency. So let's see that on the chart. Here's Eris and Aries. That's the glyph for Aries, the goddess of radical truth, standing across from the Magdalene in Libra. And here we have Medusa and Asmodeus. Look at where Medusa is, 29 degrees, 47 minutes. She is 13 minutes from crossing over the threshold of Cancer into Leo, the sign of the compassionate heart. Look, she's retrograde. Asmodeus is retrograde, meaning retrograde means pulling us in, looking at these energies within us, and on the personal and on the transpersonal within humanity. Okay? Standing across the sky from Pluto. Now look here. See where this Pluto is at 24 degrees? The new moon that just happened 2 days ago in Capricorn took place right here. 23 degrees, Pluto at 24 degrees. The new moon seeded the consciousness of this grand cross for us. Okay? Where is the full moon going to be? Gotta move this. In Leo. I mean, you can't make this up, right? This consciousness is going to be illuminated. The consciousness of this grand cross is going to be illuminated within our heart space, that compassionate heart. All right? So that's the grand cross. All right. We have another opposition, but more than that, it's a T-square. So an opposition looks like this. The T-square is, it comes down. It looks like an actual T. The opposition energy is that opportunity to balance those polarities, pull those energies up, create something at a higher frequency. And what is that something that we're creating at a higher frequency? Well, the stem of the T is pointing at what we're creating at a higher frequency. This is happening on the path of the questmate. Now, this path has to do with and requires having a lot of space and a lot of freedom for the quest for truth to be honored. And when we're in relationship with other people that are honoring this truth, they usually have come into our lives in a way where that space and freedom that is required is allowed for. So maybe they will come into our lives for a time and then go out of our lives. Maybe we will meet them in France and then we come back and you're living in Florida and they're living in Washington State and you are on the path of the questmate together. And what is the axis of the path of the questmate? Gemini, Sagittarius. So if your inner feminine is in Sagittarius, it's no surprise that the two of you are on the path of the questmate, that you are questmates for each other. Right, Maureen?
Right.
So what's happening on this axis, this path of the questmate? We've got the North Node in Gemini. The North Node is the cosmic GPS. Where are we evolving towards as an individual, and where is humanity evolving towards, right? This is a point of destiny in our evolution, so to speak. This is the path of our evolution. And who are they standing across the sky from? These are our allies in this hero journey. Two of them, two of the allies. We've got Hercules as an ally, and we've got Merlin, and we've got Arthur. And I think that you probably know the story of Merlin and Arthur, but let me just find here. Merlin, again, taking you deep into those alchemical, magical mysteries of Scorpio. And Arthur here being all about cosmic law, dharma, right conduct, right? The power of duty, dharma and duty, and morality, and preserving and maintaining righteousness. So this is what's happening. This is being supported by Merlin and his magic as humanity is unfolding. And then we see here the T-square pointing to Neptune and Hercules. Neptune being that pipeline to your inner being, who is an extension of source, and a pipeline to the source field, the unified source field from which all things are created. Well, and we know about Hercules, right? He is the divine role model for how we can use our worthiness to be able to affect these prodigious feats that would seem to be impossible. We call upon our divine strength that is available to us through the unified Christ field to be able to create this evolutionary expansion of dharma, of virtue, of righteousness. Okay, so let's see that on the chart. Here we are. Here's the North Node in Gemini. That's the glyph for Gemini. Across the sky from Sagittarius, that's the glyph for Sagittarius, of Merlin and Arthur. And then we see, here's the T-square. The T-square to Neptune and Hercules. And you'll notice here, remember I said Heracles is the Greek name, Hercules is the Roman name. This asteroid is called Heracles. That's the Greek name. All right, that's the activation. But look here, this is especially significant for Doreen because Mercury rules her chart, and Mercury is the Lord of Gemini where this is happening. The North Node is being supported by the cosmic messenger, Mercury from Aquarius, right? This grand vision, having that eagle eye view of what this is all about and how it all ties together, is communicating to us how we are within ourselves and within humanity going to create this place of dharma, right conduct, how we are able to access our inner divine strength to balance those polarities, bring them to this higher frequency and create that. The cosmic messenger is playing the role of an ally here with this aspect, okay? A trine is 120 degrees placement between the luminary bodies. A trine will always be with the same element. In this instance, we've got Gemini and Aquarius and the air element. So a trine always deals with the same element. What is the air element about? It's about inspired visions, okay? That's what we're receiving. All right. So you see the green there matches the green there. All right, in this last aspect,
Okay.
one more trine. These trines are very harmonious flows of energy. And the analogy that I can give, and we experienced this, Gary, that day, right? You're canoeing or kayaking down the river, right? And because you're going down the river, you can stop the pedaling and the flow of the river takes you down river. It's very easy, very harmonious. You flow, flow, flow. When you turn around to go upstream, now you're fighting against the current, right? That's how resistance shows up within us. but these trines are very harmonious flows of energy. And so this trine here is with Chiron, the cosmic shaman, and Yeshua, the embodiment of the Christ consciousness, flowing harmoniously to who? Juno, the goddess of sacred relationship. Hera, right? Hera, who was trying to avenge Uranus in the myth. What does this tell us? This tells us that this wound that was created through that myth is being healed through shamanic medicine, through Christ consciousness, to create a sacred partnership. Okay? A sacred partnership that allows us to experience that radical liberation. The liberation of our consciousness, right? Aquarius is all about consciousness, our consciousness, and liberate the collective consciousness of humanity. So here we see it on the chart in blue. Here we have the cosmic shaman, Chiron, standing right next to Yeshua, the embodiment of Christ consciousness, in this fire energy, Aries, flowing over to this fire energy, Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius is new spiritual consciousness territories, the highest truth, right? This is Juno, also known as Hera, the goddess of sacred partnership. This flow of energy is the shamanic medicine that we are receiving at this labor, this second labor. So again, another kind of, let's call it talisman that you can use as you're being activated by this labor. And let's look a little bit more deeply at the shamanic medicine. The shamanic medicine of Chiron and Aries has to do with self-love and your personal identity. Well, this hero on the hero's journey is having his personal identity completely transformed, completely broken down, and then will be reformed, okay? Sagittarius shamanic medicine has to do with spiritual meaning and purpose. And so now that we're in this special world, this magical world, what we thought was our truth and what we thought we believed in before doesn't show up here, right? This talisman is being completely transformed. We have a discovery of a new truth and new beliefs that will help us get through this world, because the old truths and the old beliefs aren't going to help us in this world, right? And so what happens is then you discover, what is it in this special world that is activating within you this passion, this kundalini fire? What will have passionate meaning for you as you're making this journey? Everybody good with all of that? Anything, any questions coming up? Thank you, Maureen, for the thumbs up. Any questions about any of this?
So I know in the end of class 3, right, you touched on Yeshua, but like I wasn't familiar, and I just only a few minutes before this class did I start to kind of do some research. But do you have sources or like kind of resources to focus on that already in the site, or where do you recommend? I don't know. And I can talk with you about that later too.
Well, that's a really good question, and I appreciate you asking that question. And of course, Maureen and I come from this space that, you know, the Yeshua and Magdalene and their archetypes have been evolving since the time that they were on the planet as partners, Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And so, and our journey to France in 2019 was very much about working with their energy. So I personally don't have any specific resources about them. on our resource page, because this is something we've been working with for a long time through our priestess lineage and our priestess process and high priestess process. Maureen, are there any books or any resources that you used during the priestess work that we did that you can recommend to Doreen to kind of help her get up to speed on that? And you know,
Yeah, I did. I do have some, but I can't think of them right now. I bought every one of them, so that's just what I do. I can't not have the book, you know.
right. Right. And so,
So,
Doreen, this is a very valid question. And what we can
yeah,
do, both of us, is we can look to the resources that we use during our priestess process, and we can share them in the group session next Saturday. And then
yeah.
I can put links to those on the resource page as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
When you ladies were in France, did you go to Mary's Cave?
I did not go, and I don't think we left the airport of Marseille, and just outside of Marseille is where you go to the cave. We did not go. Two of the people that went with us on the trip that are a married couple, they did go before they left France, and I haven't heard anything from them on that part of the journey. Have you, Maureen?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So no, I have not been to that particular cave. I will say that we did go to a cave very near to Rennes-le-Château and Rennes-les-Bains, where the history is that Mary Magdalene did do teachings in that cave, and that cave was very much connected to a series of underground tunnels that were connecting key places for the Cathars. And Maureen had an amazing experience there. Do you want to speak to that, Maureen?
Sure. Within the cave where she taught, you know, she had to be very, very careful. They were trying to find her and stop her from teaching, primarily why she left, I think, Israel. A lot of all the disciples, they sort of had to get out of Dodge, you know. So they spread out, and that was their mission. But you know, they were being rounded up, and they had to leave. So she ended up in France and began to teach. But there were many opposing her teachings there. So it was pretty secretive. And she was protected by soldiers, Templars. There were many that it was their job to make sure she was safe. And I tapped into that energy in that cave. And it just amazed me. I felt angry. I felt fierce, warrior-like, and very, very protective. And that energy lasted with me a little while out. It sort of dissipated when I hit the real world. I mean, I couldn't live with that going on all the time. But I remember being angry and protective and fierce all the way to the car as we were walking out. And I was shouting at cars that were going by us. You know, this was very not like me, because I thought they were going too close. You know, as we were walking along the side of the road, I didn't feel they were giving us enough space. So I'd be yelling at them, and the leader of the group couldn't believe that, you know. So not like that. So anyway, yeah, that was my experience in the cave. I can only wonder what an experience in the cave that you're talking about was like. You know, it was just incredible. A little bit humorous.
Sharing that.
There is a book that was written by the lady who was our tour guide, who, by the way, she's passed away now, was in the same priestess lineage as us. And she wrote the book, and she did go to that cave, and she describes her experiences in the cave that you're asking about, Carrie. At the top of my head, the name of her book is not coming to me. Do you remember what the name of Nancy's book is, Maureen?
No, I can't. I will,
Okay.
find that.
I'll
Yeah.
put a link to that book on the resource page. And I encourage you to read it. It's excellent. I've read it several times. And in fact, I had read it a couple of times before we went to France. And then I read it again right before we went to France. Just to, and one of our fellow travelers that we were talking to recently told us, I read the book again because it took me right back to where we went and what we experienced. And so it'll be a good book for you. And
Yeah.
Doreen, it may be actually, as I come to think of it, it may be the book for you to read regarding the question that you asked earlier about, resources about Yeshua and Magdalene.
Got it. Thank you. Mhm.
So I will definitely.
Yeah, and the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, that is a scientific study of it. They tried to put the facts together that showed the relationship and a lot about descendants, possibility of the descendants and that kind of thing. And that book was Dan Brown, when he wrote his Da Vinci Code, basically the movie encompassed the things that Holy Blood, Holy Grail covered, but he could do it in a way they could not, because he was making a movie, which was fiction, not true. And they were kind of angry about that because they had done so much research.
Violated the truth.
And he just could come out with a movie and didn't have to prove anything,
And the author of Holy Blood, Holy Grail is Henry Lincoln. And there were two other gentlemen
Yeah.
that collaborated with him. I can't remember them right now, but Henry Lincoln did other subsequent works on Rennes-le-Chateau and the Venus landscape temple there in terms of the sacred geometry and everything that's involved in that Venus landscape. So Henry Lincoln is a good source too of information, but I'll definitely put those on the resource page. Thanks for that question. Great question. Okay, anything else that anybody wants to ask about regarding the aspects in the sky and the energies being invoked for the activation of this second labor? All right, so now I know we're running over. I'll go as quickly as I can. We're already at the 3-hour mark, and that typically happens because there's so much deliberate co-creation happening amongst us, and it's just invaluable. So these are the Vision Quest opportunities. Again, you can go back to those previous slides for astrological keywords of specific luminary bodies. So we want to look at possibly the keywords for Saturn and Jupiter and discern how those energies may be allies for you at this second labor. And if you remember, let me show you here. Here's Saturn and Jupiter with this square to the actual activation of the labor. That's why I'm having you look a little more closely at that. How is this energy creating an opportunity for a breakthrough for you with this second labor? Okay. And the other one is the luminary bodies that are activated in the Grand Cross. Looking at those, contemplating what are some of the infinite possibilities for creation and breakthroughs in consciousness that may unfold within you as a part of experiencing this second labor. And again, you can share that at the group session if you choose. Okay, any question about these vision questing opportunities? All right. This is going to be fabulous for Doreen because she's a natural free faller, right? We talked about. She's a free faller.
I'm working on it.
She's a vision quester. All right. So That group session that we're having is next Saturday, the 23rd at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. In terms of our schedule, remember, the Sacred Feminine class is always the second Monday. The Sacred Masculine class is the Saturday following the Sacred Feminine class. And the group session is the Saturday following the Sacred Masculine class. That's kind of how it falls out. That's the best way for me to describe it, because depending on how the weeks and dates fall, can look different. But
What
the
what-
starting point is that second Monday for the Sacred Feminine, and everything rolls from there. What was the question, Doreen?
what time on that second Monday?
Everything is at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's a standard time. It's always 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good question. All right. These are the February classes, just so that you can put them in your calendar. So the next Sacred Feminine class will be with that 8th gate activation on February 8th, which is a Monday. Then the Saturday following it is Saturday, February 13th. And that'll be the Sacred Masculine class, the 3rd labor. Yes, Carrie.
8th gate on the 8th. I had a dream last night that said the 8th is important.
Isn't that significant? Well, and my birthday is January 8th, so 8th has always been a power number for me.
Well, and Scorpio's the 8th sign. So yeah, there's a lot of,
Yeah. Well, and of course, 8 is the number of infinity, right? Infinite possibilities for creation.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I like
Yeah.
that even better than 8.
Yeah.
It's a lot more.
I'm always in awe when this stuff, when we have these realizations, because you cannot make this stuff up. You just can't. And I'm always awe-inspired by it. Okay, real quickly, any final questions and answers? Okay, last few slides. In our recent Sacred Feminine class, I talked about these new updates to the Rosewheel School program. It's constantly evolving. This slide gives you a little bit more clarity around those updates and what they are. So that's here again, just to bring back into your awareness. And I think I spoke to these with you, Doreen, during your recent session, right? Okay, excellent. All right, now, this I have not spoken to each of you about before, and it's not on the website, and so I'll have to add it to the website. With the Rosewheel Mystery School, it's always been in my mind to have it limited to 8 spaces, and then with myself making it 9, a complete number, because of the amount of work that I do for each of you and all the work that goes into the slides for the classes, for the personal sessions, plus the group sessions. In order to be able to keep the quality of what's coming through at an elevated frequency, this was the reason why I said, okay, 8 people. So now that we've had 3 more people join the program, just bringing into your awareness that there are only 3 spaces left that are available. And what I will do at that point, when those 3 spaces are filled, is that I will start putting people on a waiting list. And of course, this is a month-to-month subscription, so we don't know what may come up in our lives when we may need to drop out again. Know that if you drop out, you go back on the waiting list, okay? And that may have to happen, we don't know. If you're on the waiting list, these are the things that you can do to engage with our work from the Rosewheel Mystery School. You can become a member of the Golden Ray Center community. Memberships are fabulous because they help financially support the work that I am doing, that we are doing through this Goddess Temple. Memberships also help expand the grid that this temple and that this Rosewheel Mystery School are connected into. And we've talked about how significant the work that we're doing on the planetary level is at this time. It allows you to connect with this conscious community that is focused on sovereignty and sacred relationship. So, and there are several membership levels, and this is where you can go to do that. So being a member consciously in the field, in the source field, connects you to this work. And of course, the classes are in the Sacred Feminine and Sacred Masculine libraries on the Roseville Mysteries YouTube channel. So you can access those as well. Once you become a member, you can, or at any time, you can schedule an inner fire walk with me. That's a personal session where I am looking at your own shamanic chart in terms of where you are as a soul and evolving and the path that you're following. It's about a sometimes 2.5 hour reading. And as a member, you get a 15% discount as a member. So that's another way that you can engage with this work if you're on the waiting list. Okay. So just wanting to bring all of that into everybody's attention because of the fact that this work, as we've seen over the past month, it's evolving at a rapid pace now, isn't it, Maureen?
Yeah, very rapid.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially now with this new layer of the alchemy that we're going to be launching next year in January. Also, I have done conscious language classes in the past in January with the new Capricorn goddess archetype. I'm going to be initiating that class again through the Roseville Mystery School too. So a lot is evolving and unfolding very rapidly. So getting on the waiting list, if those 3 seats fill up, keeps you connected. You are being informed through the grid and by watching the classes in the library.
Mhm.
So that keeps you connected and it keeps our circle intimate for us. Okay. All right. Then finally, this is what I am offering as a gift to the collective consciousness of humanity. I just mentioned my birthday was on January 8th. I have a whole new solar return path that I am walking this year, and it happens to be the mastery path of the relationship equality. This path is all about empowering and promoting each other's uniqueness and individuality. And it's about masters coming together, each of us masters, recognizing each other's as masters, choosing to work together. That's why I say this is a co-creative class. This isn't me talking to a student. We are masters co-creatively working together. And this is the focus of my path over this next year. And so what I am offering as a gift for humanity, because this work is so significant, is I am offering a free inner fire walk to these specific luminaries. These are luminaries on the global stage whose work I have been following for years. Amanda Ellis, who does these sprays, Carrie Cassidy, Simon Parks of Connecting Consciousness. Carrie Cassidy is with Project Camelot. Sasha Stone, who is the founder of 3 organizations that I talk about in the first Mars class. One of them that's coming to mind is Humanitad, the New Earth Project, I think. I can't remember all of them at the same time. David Wilcock of Divine Cosmos. I have been inspired to offer my work to them for free to support the empowerment of the work that they are doing on the global stage. And so if you know how to contact any of them, or if anybody watching this knows how to contact them, please share my offer with them because that is a significant piece of the path that I am walking this year. Okay. All right. We have gone through it all. It's huge. I feel very good that we are all like, we're getting it, right? We're getting it. We're embodying it. We understand it, that there's clarity around it. And this has been a long, 4 months. It's taken 4 months to really feel like that this sacred masculine journey with this Mars synodic cycle, for it to kind of take hold within me and within the classes. How do you feel about that, Maureen?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm feeling really good about this, and deep appreciation for the three of you hearing the call and crossing the threshold with us. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
I really love this group. I do. It's just precious. Thanks. Thanks so much.
Yes, yes. As soon as this is compiled, I will get it onto the resource page. I will commit to having the resource page done by sometime tomorrow. And then I will get that notification out to you. And after the resource page is updated, I will get the recording of this into the Sacred Masculine Library. Okay? Yes, Doreen.
Sorry, a logistical question.
That's
So,
okay.
again, I know, so I have it on my calendars for February 8th and the 13th at 2:00. But is the group meeting next Saturday after this one, right? So next Saturday at 2. Just checking. Okay.
Yes, and I will send out, always I will send out, usually it's the day before, I will send out a link, a Zoom link for you to be able to get right into the group session, also your personal sessions, and then the classes. Any other final questions? Okay, beloveds, heart to heart, I thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you on Saturday. Is everybody good with that? Excellent.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Maureen.
Bye. Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.